Hello, and in this video I'm going to look at the part 2 topic, describe a comic actor who is popular in your country. You should say who he or she is, what type of person he or she is, how you got to know about him or her, and why he or she is popular. When I first read the question, my mind went blank and I couldn't think of a single person. However, then I remembered Rowan Atkinson. He is probably most famous for his role as Mr. Bean, which was shown on British TV screens in the 90s. What was highly unusual about this character was that he rarely spoke, and when he did, he mumbled. Mr. Bean often seems unaware of basic aspects of the way the world works, and the programme usually focuses on what would normally be considered simple activities, such as going swimming, using a TV, interior decorating, or going to church. The humour largely comes from his original and often absurd solutions to problems, and his total disregard for others when solving them, his pettiness and occasional nastiness. I'm not entirely sure how old Rowan Atkinson is, but I'm guessing he's now in his 60s. He's quite a private person, so I don't know that much about him because he rarely gives interviews. But one thing that comes to mind is he split up with his wife a couple of years ago, met someone else and became a father again last year. Anyway, I digress. As well as Mr. Bean, he has played many other comedic roles, such as the lead in Johnny English, a British spy comedy film parodying the James Bond secret agent genre. I suppose one of the major reasons why he became an internationally acclaimed actor was the lack of dialogue in Mr. Bean made it easy to understand by people of all nationalities. It was visual comedy and therefore appealed to the younger generation in particular. He is, nevertheless, great at delivering comedic lines, and the character he played in Blackadder was incredibly cynical, charismatic, and highly intelligent. Now, this opening line of me saying my mind went blank is very true. I saw this topic this morning and thought, who am I going to talk about? And I couldn't think of anyone, and it took me 2 or 3 minutes. In the IELTS exam, you have 1 minute to prepare, you have 1 minute to focus on language, and it's easy to spend that 1 minute panicking and not knowing who you're going to talk about. So it's useful to know what topics are in advance, which is why you're doing this course, so that you can have somebody in your head to talk about. Now, if you're struggling to think of somebody from your country, because it doesn't say from your country, it's just somebody who's famous in your country, then use Rowan Atkinson like I have done here. But this phrase, my mind went blank, is very useful, and it describes when you just cannot think of anybody, there's nothing in your head. On British TV screens, this is just another way of saying on the TV. Think about using expressions like this, the 80s, the 90s, to talk about 1980, 1990. We don't need to know it's exactly 1992, and to be honest, I don't know, so that's why it's useful to use this. This is a collocation. Collocations are really important to get 7 or above. Highly unusual. You can use it for lots of things. You could use it in writing. Mumbled, not a word that you'll be able to use much, but it describes somebody who does not speak in a very clear way. So they that's to mumble, so you can't understand what I'm saying. Unaware of, so not aware of, oblivious to certain things. Interior decorating, I just put this in because it's more complex and it means kind of painting in your house. The humour, if you're talking about comic actor, you need to think of the noun, which is the humour. And it largely comes from, largely is another word that you could use instead of mainly. Absurd is a good word. It's quite difficult to say, absurd, and it means ridiculous, silly. Total disregard for, this is a collocation, and it means he doesn't care about, he doesn't think of other people. Pettiness, this is a good noun, and it means somebody who's very concerned with things that are not that important. He gets very obsessed with unimportant things. Nastiness, he's bad, he's not nice. I'm not entirely sure is probably a phrase you could get into every part too, because there are certainly things that you would not be sure about. So I'm not entirely sure, but I'm guessing this is a good way to get some complex language and grammar in there, because you've got the present continuous. And again, for ages, in his 60s. He split up with, this means he's separated from. Anyway, I digress. This again is a useful phrase for particularly for part 2 speaking, when you start talking about things that are maybe not relevant and you want to come back to the topic. To digress means to go into another area that's not relevant. So anyway, I digress, so I'm going back to what I should be talking about. A comedic role, a comedy actor will play a comedic role. The lead is the main character. To parody, or a parody, is when somebody does a film or a TV programme like something else, so in this case the James Bond secret agent genre, but they're making fun of it, they're mocking it, so they're doing it in a not serious way. And genre is very useful for films and acting and TV programmes, books, and it just means type. Internationally acclaimed actor, very useful for this topic. So somebody who's very famous and people think he's good all over the world. Dialogue is speech. Visual comedy. So if you're talking about a comedic actor, you're probably going to say they're very good at visual comedy, and that's like, you know, making things funny visually, which was typical of Mr. Bean. And it appealed to the younger generation in particular. This means that particularly young people liked it. What actors do is deliver lines. That's a good collocation. And what Rowan Atkinson is good at is delivering comedic lines, funny lines. The character he played in Blackadder was cynical. Somebody who's cynical is quite a negative character and doesn't believe things and can say negative things about things. Charismatic, this is somebody who's very attractive, not necessarily in a visual way, but you're very attracted to that person because of how they speak, or maybe they're a great leader. Somebody like Barack Obama you'd describe as charismatic. I did find this topic quite difficult, like I said, and I think it's one that many people will struggle with in the IELTS exam, so that's why I've wanted to create a video for it. If you're struggling in the IELTS, just do Rowan Atkinson, because it doesn't say somebody from your country, it just means somebody who's famous in your country, and it's highly likely that you will have heard of Rowan Atkinson, or even if you haven't, just pretend you have and talk about him. I'm finding that IELTS topics are getting increasingly difficult and increasingly more specific. One thing I would like to point out, though, is the word actor can be for a woman as well. In the past we used to use actor and actress. Nowadays we're tending to use the same word for both males and females. So you can talk about a woman if you know of a very funny woman who is also a comedy actor.